Welcome into the Big City Sports Podcast. We have another episode coming up today, joined as always by Swig. We're going to talk a little bit of Jets because they're fun to talk about, and then we're going to get into some hockey. But before we get into that stuff, Swig, how you doing?
I'm doing good. We're about to talk about my favorite sport. It's been a little while. Do a little quarter way of the season, almost fifth of the way through the season. Update on that. It's nice having a week off from the Giants. If I'm being honest with you, even though they won their last game, Bears didn't play either. So we can do the old podcast favorite of just roasting the Jets for a minute and then moving on to hockey.
Oh, the Jets. Where do we start? Do we start with Mike White? Do we start at? Do we have four things to talk about the Jets? Hint on the interceptions, or what do you want to get into with the Jets?
Place to start with the Jets is how quickly the game got away from them at the end of the first half, beginning of the second half. Down 10-3, it was at least competitive on the scoreboard, even though the offense didn't get anything going, and the legend of Mike White might have run out a little bit here in this game. But they went from down 10-3 at the end of the near the end of the first half to down 31-3 at the beginning of the second half with a 6-minute stretch of game where they gave up 3 touchdowns. And it's just amazing. A blink of an eye, and any chance that they have, it's gone. And so it's something that we haven't seen from them quite as much the last couple of weeks, but we didn't expect the Bills to lose 2 games in a row that they shouldn't have, right?
Yeah, we didn't. And Mike White, first overall pick, my left ass cheek, dude, you're not good. That's just asinine. You can't come out here and say I should be the first overall pick and then throw 4 picks, emphasis on picks with everything you talk about there. Mike White, this is you suck, man. Just own it. I'm just gonna let it rip. You had a good game. Then they got film on you, and then you got your ass kicked, Jet style. So welcome to the quarterback position in New York, kid.
Well, can we at least give him credit for the game against the Bengals? Because we didn't really get to talk about that. And we talked about how bad the Jets' backup quarterback situation looked. And now that the legend of the first game Mike White started has worn off a little bit, maybe you can make that argument again. But let's give him credit where it's due. Honestly, I don't like the Jets at all, but that was pretty awesome watching him throw for 400 yards plus and at multiple touchdowns in his first start and leading the Jets to a win over the Bengals. I mean, come on, I don't think any of us saw that coming. So let's at least, before we eviscerate him any further, give him credit for a very good, well-played game then, leading them to half of their season's win total. And joining Cam Newton as the only quarterbacks to throw for 400 yards in their first start. I mean, come on, that's going to be a great trivia question for a long time.
Yeah, it is. I guess I will tip my hat to him, tip a hockey helmet as we transition there, but no, he had a good game. He had a good game. Everybody has a good game. Everyone remembers them for their game. And that's what Mike White has. He has a game. So kudos to him. Trevor Lawrence should take notes on how to throw for 400 yards and touchdowns, but that's neither here nor there. Let's head over to the ice. You got your Rangers hat on today. The Rangers, we saw Ryan Reeves drop the gloves earlier this week. First fight, kicked ass. And the Rangers have been kicking ass with 4 in a row.
I mean, they've been better. I don't think they've been playing as well as their record might indicate. 10-3-3 overall, can't complain with that, but it's definitely not that simple where they've been the better team more often than not. That just hasn't been true. Personal note, got to go to the Rangers game in Columbus the other night, and the Rangers' 2 best games this season have probably been both against Columbus. It was good to go see them in person again. Nice to see a win. I was there wearing my Panarin jersey, and Panarin scored 2 goals, which was amazing, and waved to the crowd a little bit. So I'm sitting there egging him on. It's a good time. I got to do that with Rick Nash back in the day, and now Panarin. It's wonderful. I can't wait until their next star player comes to the Rangers for no reason in free agency. But the Rangers overall, Igor has been amazing in net. He's stolen several points for us already this season. The continued excellence of Adam Fox on the back end, who just got a contract extension that I was waiting for. The offense is starting to show signs of life here. They've been better at 5-on-5 recently. They haven't played great teams in the 4-game winning streak, but you got to beat the bad teams and take care of business. And thankfully, they've been able to do that. Hopefully, it continues.
Yeah, it's got to be cool seeing Artemi Panarin as I throw on the glasses here. Artemi Panarin leading the team in points, tied with Adam Fox, 4 goals, 12 assists, both in that category. So Good play as of late. Nice when you get to play a team like Columbus for a nice confidence builder, especially when you get to witness it in person. But to your point, Igor Shesterkin been an absolute monster in net. He's been peppered with shots on multiple occasions throughout the course of this season. Stood his ground, has made some great plays in net, and I think he's done a great job. Him and Georgiev been. He's going to be needed upon here with a lot of these games coming up in the next few games. So there's going to have to be some sort of playing field there where he's got to step up a little bit. But I have been absolutely impressed with Igor Shesterkin.
He's been amazing, but it would be nice if the team would help him out a little bit. There have been multiple games where the Rangers play like absolute dog shit and Igor bails them out. And it's kind of reminiscent of a certain other goalie the Rangers had for a long time where similar things would happen. And I get that it's nice to have a goalie steal a game for you every once in a while. Until the winning streak, at least, the Rangers were getting bailed out entirely by Shesterkin and playing terribly otherwise on a game in, game out basis. That is not a sustainable formula to win hockey games. So the Rangers thankfully have been better offensively, especially at 5-on-5 the last few games. And I hope that continues. But yeah, there was a while it was Igor stands on his head, Adam Fox and Panarin maybe combine for one ridiculous offensive play, and then they hold on for dear life and hope the clock runs out. And it's a formula that won a few games, but the Rangers also have had moments where they were playing pretty well and blew leads and only ended up with 1 point. So there's definitely some work to do. They're hemorrhaging shots and grade A chances in the defensive zone, which is a major concern for me. Definitely not encouraged by that. But I think we got to talk about the wing depth a little bit because the Rangers lost Sammy Blais of the season to a torn ACL, and with the Kravtsov situation we already addressed, the right wing depth, which was already bad, is now in really, really bad shape here. And the only right wings on the team right now that might be capable of some offense, who stepped up tonight at least, Capo Caco and Julien Gauthier.
Yeah, Barclay Goodrow, another one that he's not been much, but he's got 7 points on the year, so give him a little bit of love there. But I mean, you mentioned Capo Caco. I'm not going to go down that hill again. You know how I feel about Capo. But you bring up the depth. Do you think this is an area for the Rangers to potentially make a move? They have a good record right now.
I could see them making a move closer to the trade deadline. I think they got to get somebody because right now, if they have 4 right wings who can at least play in the NHL, I'd say like Kako and Gauthier both scored tonight, which is great. Kako at least has been better the last couple games. He scored a goal, got his confidence back, and he's playing on a line with Panarin and Strome, which can't hurt him. And Gauthier at least has some skill. He scored a very nice goal tonight. He's been active. And here's his chance to lock down a lineup spot at least. The other 2 right wings are Barclay Goodrow and Ryan Reeves, who let's be realistic, you can't rely on them for offense. So, but even if you could, those are your only 4 right wingers on the roster right now. So maybe you call up a Morgan Barron if one of them gets hurt, but the depth is completely gone. Kravtsov's in exile. Blais is not coming back this year, and we can get into PK Subban in a different episode, but not worth it here. I think they got to make some sort of move. It doesn't have to be major. I know that the Rangers are probably going to overreact and go get Phil Kessel when Arizona inevitably sells off later this season, but I don't think it has to be quite that drastic. One thing I would say, though, with the Blais injury, he was playing up with Kreider and Zibanejad. I would much rather have Lafreniere take his spot because those 3 have played well together before, and that would put him in a better position to start producing. And instead of Barclay Goodrow, who let's be fair here, he is not a first-line winger.
Yeah, he's not. He's not a first-line winger, but he's played on some Stanley Cup teams. He has some winning pedigree, so maybe he could bring some of that to the lineup, but not a lot of offensive production. You bring up Phil Kessel, hot dog man. Maybe he does make his way over. He loves hot dogs, but you mentioned that top line. Chris Kreider being one of them on that line. 12 goals on this season. That's tied for second in the National Hockey League. What has he done this year that's impressed you?
Well, it's mostly been on the power play. He's been a very good net front presence recently, and this is a trend that started last year. And it's something, being somebody who's watched Kreider for better part of a decade now, we all know the speed that he has and the wrist shot that he has, but he's never been a consistent player really until I'm still a little hesitant to say it, but he's been more consistent the last year or two. getting in front of the net. He's been great redirecting pucks, or setting screens in front of the goaltender. It's little things like that, putting home rebounds instead of relying on the speed and the shot as much as he was at the beginning. He still possesses those qualities, but when he relied on them almost entirely, he basically turned into Michael Grebner, who never had the same. And Michael Grebner had some good years with the Rangers, particularly where he could use his speed and had his moments, but could not play much of a game outside of the occasional breakaway. And Kreider, I thought at times was like that. He was a very streaky goal scorer. He's bigger. He had more size to use, and he's been doing it better. Playing with Zibanejad definitely has helped as well, although I haven't been super impressed with Mika to start this season, but he did have a really nice assist tonight. It's more just getting involved in the power play, using his size to his advantage, and that's where he's got most of his goals, and then complementing it with the occasional rush up the ice because he still has the speed as well.
Let's get into the defense a little bit here. You mentioned Adam Fox. He's obviously one of the best defenders in the league. He was last year. Leads the league or leads the team in points, tied with Panarin at 16. But outside of that, I really want to dive in. You said they haven't really helped out the net front presence in front of Igor on a consistent basis throughout the course of the year. Let me just ask, how do you feel about the defense?
In general, not great. It seems to be regressing a bit to how bad the Rangers were in their own zone when Lindy Ruff was still at the assistant coach, working mostly with the defense. And hopefully it's something that gets better, but we don't want to keep peppering the goalie with 45 shots allowed every night. That's just way too much. Fox and Lindgren, I think, have been good overall. I thought Lindgren was honestly the Rangers' best player tonight. But the second pair, while I think Trouba has been better so far this season, I think Andre Miller's gotten off to a bit of a slower start. He's starting to find his game a little bit. But that second pair that was relatively under the radar last year, I think has been a little bit worse so far this year. And then that third pair is a work in progress. Patrick Nemeth, I haven't seen it yet, what he provides necessarily. Like, I know that sounds harsh. I haven't been huge on him so far. I think he's made a couple of really egregious mistakes, and isn't able to exit the zone as well as some of the others. And he's playing primarily with Niels Lundqvist, who I think he's been better after a slow start, but haven't seen a ton from him yet either. He hasn't come in and been a really solid second pair defenseman immediately like Miller did last year. So I think it should get better as it goes along. But the second and third pairs, I think, have been inconsistent at best. And that's a big part of the problem.
How do you think new coaching staff has helped out this team? Or at least what have you seen from the coaching staff?
Well, I think it's been better the last few games. The Rangers' first game in the winning streak was over Florida, their first regulation loss, and they're legit, by the way. But after that Florida game, the Rangers had almost a bye week. They had 4 full days off before the game I went to in Columbus, and it seems like they were able to figure out a couple of things in those few days. They've been shooting the puck a lot more, which I've been screaming at the TV for them to do for roughly my entire life. And but put more pucks on the net. They've been a lot more aggressive getting through the neutral zone, creating off the rush, which I think is where Panarin and especially thrives, Zibanejad as well. I do like the dump and chase at times, but I think there needs to be a mix of them trying to create off the rush as well, because that's where they've traditionally been able to generate the most. And the last 4 games, they've been a lot better at 5-on-5, which the Rangers struggled mightily with. Even in the wins, the Florida game, they won 4-3 and didn't score a single 5-on-5 goal. They scored 1 on the power play, 2 4-on-4, and 1 shorthanded. And outside of 1 or 2 games, that was a theme. It's been better lately. The younger guys are starting to get some confidence. Kakko scored 2 games in a row. Hopefully he can build on that. Gautier's locked into a middle 6 role now, and he scored a really nice goal tonight. They've been attacking the net more. It's more of the Gallant system that we were expecting, with the high risk, high reward, some more stretch passes, some more creativity, length of the ice. I think it's something that is sustainable, but the injuries, I would prefer slow down.
Yeah, not good if you're injured. But right now, the Rangers are atop the Metropolitan Division, lead that division. But a team that is in the bottom, and I mean the basement of the Metropolitan Division, is a team that has been to the playoffs the last 2 years. We talked about them a lot. It's the New York Islanders. Let's get into them and talk about what the hell is wrong with the New York Islanders to start the year.
Well, being biased, of course, I think it's great where it is. The Islanders. Let's put out the disclaimer right away. The obvious one. Yeah, they're off to a bit of a slow start. They've had a couple of other relatively slow starts under Barry Trotz. This is an Islanders team that just finished their 13th game of the season. All 13 of those games have been on the road. I think that's definitely been part of the issue. They're finally going to make their home debut in their next game, but the Islanders moving into a new arena that wasn't quite ready at the beginning of the year. The Rangers had something similar about 10 years ago, maybe, where Madison Square Garden was being renovated and they played their first 10, 12, however many games on the road. And it was tough. And the Islanders have lost 4 in a row now. They've gotten blown out by both of the Florida teams in the last couple of days. And while I'm not upset by any of that, I do expect the Islanders to improve here. They're going to start to be able to settle into a much more normal NHL schedule. They're going to have a lot more home games coming up, which can only help them. It's a team where I think the more concerning thing isn't necessarily the record, which is only 5-6-2. That's not great for them. I think it's more they haven't been as good defensively as they have been the last couple of years, because that defense has been what's primarily carried them to those 2 straight Eastern Conference finals.
Ah, yes, the Nick Leddy effect. There's a reason the Detroit Red Wings are 500 right now. No, that's not the case. Nick Leddy, my guy, of course. Yeah, this defense is not playing up to par. For a golf term in hockey. It's the Barry Trotz system that usually preaches defense, puck possession team, dump and chase. They don't have any goal scorers. They can't afford goal scorers because they're paying all these defensemen, and the renovation obviously has got to be tough on that front. But I can't sit here as a hockey fan and continue to watch this team not have any goal scorers on their roster and expect anything other than the most boring team to watch in hockey. And if you're not winning any of these games, there is 0% of any neutral fan that will turn on a game and be like, let's watch the last place Islanders who don't know how to score a goal.
Well, other than people who take joy in their misery, I would agree. But at the same time, like last year, we talked about this a lot. The Islanders were doing a lot better. They weren't exactly a great offensive team last year either. They have that Barry Trotz defensive identity. They've had it ever since he came over from the Capitals. And that's still the strength of this team overall. The Islanders have had that boring label for a couple years, but Islanders fans rightfully have not given a shit about that because they've been successful and they've been very close to making the finals a couple times. And while I'm happy they didn't, they still were smart enough to play to their strengths. They were able to generate enough offense in the playoffs to make a deep run. And I still think they have enough talent where something like that could happen again. At the same time, though, there's a couple points offensively I would want to make. So you could look at a bright side where Anders Lee has come back and has looked pretty solid, scored a couple goals up in tight, crashing the net for rebounds like he would do. He has done his whole career. But on the other hand, let's ignore Barzal for a second. Some of the more secondary guys that you might expect some goals from. Josh Bailey has, I think, struggled pretty well to start the season here. There, Kyle Palmeri, I know he scored the Islanders' only goal tonight, but he has 3 goals, I think, in the regular season since he's come over. They want more from him than that. I know he has a few assists, but guys like that, like Bavillier, like Brock Nelson, they're not scoring enough. And if they don't get that from the secondary guys, their defense isn't playing as well as it did last year, then they are going to have a hard time winning hockey games. I do expect it to get better. And the 13-game road trip to start the year is extremely difficult. Let's not just glide over that. But if they don't start to fix some of these issues, then it will be difficult for them to return to last season's form.
Yeah, one name you didn't mention who has had a pretty solid start to his career or start to his year, 5 goals throughout the course of the season, no assists to go along with those 5 points, is Oliver Wahlstrom. We talked about him being a big factor on this team. He's 21 years old, and he was someone we said he has to take that next step for them, and he's a big time player for them, and hopefully he can get right down the stretch.
Well, okay, it's funny you say that because he actually was going to be the next person I brought up, but for a different reason. Yeah, so goal scoring wise, yeah, he scored more goals than Palmeri and Nelson and Bavillier, a couple of these guys combined, right?
Yeah.
Trotz doesn't like him, or at the very least, Trotz is harsher on him and Noah Dobson to a lesser extent. Wahlstrom has been scratched already this season a couple of times, despite the fact he is one of the few who's managed to put a few pucks in the net. And I know Trotz is not the only coach, and he's always had this reputation where he's harder on younger players. But I thought he would be an important key. Wallstrom was only in the lineup against the Lightning because Casey Cizikas was sick, and he's playing there on the fourth line with Cal Clutterbuck and Matt Martin, which isn't exactly putting him in a great position to generate offense. No offense to them. It's similar to when the Rangers put Lafreniere on a line with Rooney and Reeves. I mean, those guys aren't going to put him in a good position to score points either. And I don't understand it. So most of these guys the Islanders are relying on for offense aren't scoring, and taking Wahlstrom out. And I know he's a young and talented and inconsistent player, but Trotz had some harsh words about him where he said he was making some glaring mistakes. And that could be a situation worth monitoring here going forward. I think Dobson as well. I know he got scratched for a game or two and he's been inconsistent. I'm hoping that they're smart enough for their sake where it's just maybe give him the occasional game off to reset, but not actually scratch him on a consistent basis. But if I'm an Islanders fan, I'd be worried about how Wahlstrom's being handled.
This might be bold, but do you worry at all about Barry Trotz?
I think it's too soon to say that. But I think it's a what?
Especially without a home game this year.
Right. I mean, let's not jump the gun. They're 13 games in. I know they're not off to a great start, but 5-6-2 isn't like, it's not like they're the Coyotes here either, who did win tonight, by the way, for their second win of the season.
Nice. Hot dog, man.
It took them 16 games to get to 2 wins. So it's not like the Islanders have hit rock bottom. It's early in the year. They've managed to get a point in 7 out of 13 games. So it's not like they've done nothing. But on the defensive end, I think I've noticed where while Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock are still playing very well, they've been separated. They haven't been paired together the whole season. Zdeno Chara has not been off to a great start in his return. His age, I think, is finally starting to show a little bit. When Chara and Scott Mayfield are paired together, that is some ugly defensive hockey to watch. And
a lot of goals.
And Dobson's been inconsistent. Andy Green has been in and out of the lineup, I believe, as well. It's just with the loss of Leddy and offensively, I mean, we haven't mentioned the loss of Jordan Eberle yet, which hasn't helped them either in the expansion draft. But there's a couple of clear things that are costing the Islanders a bit right now. The road trip, some of the personnel, some inconsistency. I think they're going to start to settle in here and get better. But if they continue to struggle like this for another, let's say 10 or 15 games, then I think it'd be a lot more concerning then.
Yeah, that's something to monitor throughout the course of the season right now. I want to talk about the goalies before we switch on over to the Blackhawks. Goalies, Ilya Sorokin, Semyon Varlamov hasn't played much, obviously coming back from the injury earlier that he sustained before the season. Sorokin has looked pretty solid, but he doesn't have that phenomenal defense in front that he had last year in his rookie season.
Not quite. And Varlamov missing some time to start the year. It was his net. Varlamov just came back, and Trotz and Varlamov both kind of said, he was okay in his first start, but you do expect him to settle in and contribute as well. And once the goalies start to settle in, that can only help the rest of the team.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, and I expect them to. This team is still too talented to struggle like this the whole season. But I do want to make it clear. I don't expect the Islanders to become a top 5 team in terms of offense either. I think they could bring their defense back, but outside of like as great as that Pelech and Pulock pair is, I mean that is one of the top shutdown defensive pairs in the NHL. Behind them, I do think it's more vulnerable. I don't like the I don't think Chara is the player he once was, and no offense to him, he's a future Hall of Famer, but I haven't been impressed with him to start the year. I think Dobson's been inconsistent. I want to see him play though, similar to Wahlstrom. I think getting him some reps, especially on the power play, will be really, really important for the Islanders' development. The goaltending question, I'm honestly probably least concerned about that if I'm an Islanders fan. Varlamov might need to get some rust off, but he's played extremely well. Sorokin's clearly very talented in the future of this team. That's a pretty good tandem. And once they settle in, I think some more wins will start to come for them. But offensively and defensively, I think there are some reasons to be concerned.
Yeah, right now they are in the bottom of the Metropolitan Division, so definitely some work to be done as they try to get up in that area. But let's take a look at the Chicago Blackhawks, and if it weren't for the Arizona Coyotes, they would be in last place in the Central Division. fired head coach Jeremy Colleton. He's out of there. They hired the Miami Hurricanes quarterback Derek King to take over and be the head coach. So got to be hard. Stealing the line directly from ESPN 1000. It's got to be hard. Got to be hard being a quarterback for Miami and then going to coach the Blackhawks at night. But, it's a grind, they say, the college grind. But no, Derek King, phenomenal so far in his debut. It seems like the Hawks are playing for him, showing some life, but this team is bad. I'm just going to say it. It doesn't matter. You look up and down the roster. They have the talent. They're underperforming. Jeremy Colleton wasn't good. He was not a good coach. But that doesn't mean that you have all these star players of Patrick Kane, Alex DeBrincat, Jonathan Taves, Seth Jones, and everybody else that continues down this list. But every single player on your roster that has played a hockey game for the Chicago Blackhawks this year isn't above a -3 plus-minus rating. So they have been atrocious.
Well, it sounds like you have thoughts.
I do.
And at the end of this, I do have one brief off ice thing going back to the scandal we talked about, but I will save that for the end this week since it's not quite as tied into the Blackhawks directly, I would say. On the ice, they did win their last 3 games. Like since Derek King has come over, they've finally shown some flashes of the talent they still have. But the Blackhawks are 15 games into the season. I'm not even a Blackhawks fan, and I'm exhausted with all the coverage of them. I mean, just a complete circus on and off the ice. Yeah, obviously the stuff off the ice is much more important and horrifying, but they weren't any better on the ice for the first 10 games of the season at least. It felt exhausting. And I know we talked about how exhausting and draining the Rangers season was last year. This Blackhawks season has the potential to be like that. So far, I think it already is. On the ice, I mean, we talked about it with the other two. Where's the 5-on-5 offense from this team? They're not generating anything without a man advantage. I don't think anyone outside of DeBrincat and Kane, and I think the article in the Athletic said Brandon Hagel. I don't think anyone else has scored more than 1 5-on-5 goal this season. That's a problem. Dominique Kubalik doesn't have any. I know he's a streaky, but he's off to a disappointing start. It's weird to see a team that has this much talent struggle offensively as much as they have. And the goaltending has not been off to a very good start either, which isn't helping the situation.
Yeah. Marc-Andre Fleury hasn't looked great. Kevin Lankinen hasn't looked great at all. Just not really anything going on in that area, but the defense in front has been bad too. And you sign a Seth Jones, big contract, trade Boquist, who sucks at defense anyway. So I'm not going to get into that, but you trade a bunch of your future. You then sign all that cap you got. Good job. Way to send a big middle finger as you walk out the building, Stan Bowman. And stuck with Seth Jones with a big contract, who has a solid -7 to start his Blackhawks career. He does have 13 points, so he's good offensively, but we don't need another Eric Gustafsson. That's a right-handed shot, and you don't need to pay him that much money to do so. But this team has been just so bad in so many areas. Alex DeBrincat, great goal scorer. He is probably the best. No, I can't say it. Patrick Kane's the best player on this team. Alex DeBrincat is very good. Very good. He's a superstar talent in this league. He's someone that can put the puck in the back of the net. I think he's a solid player and can eventually get to the point where he's another high point total guy with 40 plus goals. But this team is just so bad. I mean, you look at Connor Murphy, that guy's got a -13. Jake McCabe, a -14. Like, there is no positive outlook on these defensemen. And that's the reason that these goaltenders have sucked so bad.
Well, I think McCabe and Murphy, especially, like they're supposed to be the shutdown pairing in Chicago, aren't they?
Yeah, they're supposed to be.
I don't think they've been playing like that. I don't think the plus-minus rating is entirely indicative of it, but I think it's not my favorite stat in the world, but I do get the point that you're trying to make. Offensively, like they create nothing as well, so that leads to them spending a lot more time in their own zone. And even if you're a good defensive player, you don't want to spend too much time in your own zone. Even Pelech and Pulock on the Islanders, as much as they can be a vacuum, like they don't usually get pinned deep like that for a couple of minutes. I know that I've made my feelings on the Seth Jones trade and contract known, and I'm sure that they will only how do we put that, exponentially grow over the next decade that he's going to be in Chicago.
Oh, don't say that.
Yeah, it's terrifying, isn't it? I think the team is going to be better than they've been to start this season. I think they're going to end up being a mediocre team. offensively, they're more talented than say the Islanders are. And I wanted to get your take on
Absolutely.
this real quick. I think Taves has looked pretty good, all things considered, since he's come back. He missed all of last season. I think he's been generating offense and driving play. I think the goals are going to come for him.
Yeah, he doesn't have a goal this year, but he's got 8 points in 15 games. That's a lot from your captain. So he's doing a lot of things well. Kirby Dach, I've been a little bit disappointed with, but even him this time last year came back late. Still trying to figure out what he is. I've only seen one version of a good Kirby Dach, and it was in the London, or not London, the COVID shutdown in Canada where they had the playoffs, and Kirby Dach looked like a great hockey player over there. He looked good in the juniors until he broke his hand, but that's another story. I think he has the potential to be good. He's still very young in this league, but I have been absolutely disappointed with Philip Kurashev. No goals, 3 points on the season, 14 games played. He started the season on the top line, Kubalik, Taves, Kurashev, and he hasn't done anything on this hockey team, and he's supposed to be one of these wingers that help out and give some scoring depth.
Yeah, the secondary scoring just hasn't really been there because there hasn't been a ton of primary scoring either outside of special teams. I think the Blackhawks are going to be a better offensive team than they've shown so far. I don't have that same confidence defensively. So I do think this is a Blackhawks team that's going to create a lot off the rush in the top six. But I do think that this team, the Blackhawks, are going to be better served with some of the dump and chase mentality and just grinding below the goal line a little bit more, just because the top two lines, if they aren't able to get anything off the initial rush, they are at least capable of keeping possession, getting back out to the point, having sustained pressure. I don't see that as much with the bottom six. And there is one question I wanted to ask. I don't think we've mentioned this one yet on the podcast, but especially if the Blackhawks continue to struggle, what do you want them to do with Lucas Reichel?
Call him up to the National Hockey League. I want him to be called up soon, not like now, but I say give it maybe end of December, maybe mid-December. I think that's a good timetable. Get him some life in the National Hockey League. He was a first round pick, someone they took in 20, I believe it was, and he's someone that has looked pretty good in Rockford. I'm not gonna lie, he's put up points. He's looked good. He looked good in the preseason. There's a lot of great play surrounding Lucas Reichel, and they're stuck right now because they threw all their chips in one basket when they brought in Fleury, and it was so weird how they realized, hey, time's clicking on some of these superstars. We better bring in talent and try to go for a run. But meanwhile, you're not a good hockey team. So they're going to have to sell some of that talent if it continues. Tyler Johnson did get hurt, but maybe he gets back and they do trade him later. Maybe you trade Marc-Andre Fleury somewhere. Like, there's still so many reasons. There's so many directions the Hawks can go, which involves trading some of these players. Maybe it's a Jonathan Toews. Maybe it's Patrick Kane. That would be a big time move if they do end up moving some of those for a spot that doesn't have a full-time GM right now.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see who ends up taking Stan Bowman's place. I'm also curious to see if Derek King sticks around or if the Blackhawks end up bringing in another coach to be full-time maybe after the season. There's a lot of moving parts in this organization, as there should be, because the entire organization's been pretty despicable for the last few years, and a lot of guys who need to be replaced and are being replaced. But the organization's in a constant changing thing right now. The whole front office, everything comes out now. Colleton's fired. They have a new coaching staff, a lot of new guys on the roster. So the whole organization's in turmoil right now, on and off the ice. There's not a lot to be happy about so far. The Blackhawks play the Kraken tomorrow night after resting for several days. They kind of had a bye week almost too. And if there's a good place for them to start, maybe building some more momentum after the break, playing an expansion team is usually a good way to do that, because this team is not being quite as successful as Vegas was a few years ago.
Yeah, they really don't have too much star talent on this team. You look at it and it's like,
that is normal for expansion teams.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, Vegas, they got some good play out of like a Tuck, Marcia. So like they had some good play in their first season, but carried by Marc-Andre Fleury, of course. But wish the Hawks could get that from him. But before we continue on, you said final point. You said about the off the ice issue.
Yeah, the only other thing I saw, is so far at least, is not long after Kyle Beach had his interview, the mother of the teenager in Michigan that Brad Aldrich assaulted also did an interview, which was also very powerful, and I'd recommend watching. But after that came out, the NHL was asked if they would provide any sort of therapy services or any other services to that teenager at the time, and they said they wouldn't do it, which is just awful to me. Even if Brad Aldrich is no longer employed by the NHL, when he was at the high school in Michigan, the NHL and the Blackhawks especially are at least partially responsible because they didn't press charges and didn't take it seriously enough when this was happening to Beach, and that's part of the reason he ended up at that school in the first place. So, and if the NHL has the resources, which they do, to try to help him and his family, why not do the right thing and get you? Because A, it's the right thing to do, and B, for once, get yourself some good PR, which the NHL is terrible at. I know that's not the point here, but they have the resources to do the right thing. They don't. I thought that was worth mentioning. It's just another bad twist to a horrible story.
Absolutely. It's a joke. I saw that report earlier too. I totally forgot about it. It slipped my mind the past few days, weeks, whatever, but not a good look at all. I mean, this is a spot for the NHL to grow, take things serious. We talked about it in that last episode regarding the Kyle Beach situation and the scandals surrounding the Hawks. And this is like we dove into the NHL and the Gary Bettman side of things. And like this is your chance. If you seriously want to take stuff serious, now this is a thing where you step up and say, okay, there's step one in this direction. Just something as simple as that, which is care for another person that was a victim of someone that was surrounded in the National Hockey League, had his name on the cup, for crying out loud. Like this is someone that has been in the NHL, been in the Blackhawks organization. Do the damn right thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not that simple for the NHL, and it's not just with this scandal. They've had plenty of other issues, whether it's with racial issues or player safety issues. It's just, is any of this surprising? Yeah, we've said it before. I love the sport, hate the league. And in fairness, it's not just the NHL. We saw what happened in Ukraine not too long ago. This is a cultural problem within the whole sport. So I would like to see some positive changes there, but I thought that was worth mentioning. And any other details we get on the scandal, we'll definitely make sure to report those as well. But on and off the ice for the Blackhawks has been just awful recently.
Yeah, it has. Not good for them. You mentioned the trip to Seattle coming up. That takes place on Wednesday night after this episode drops. But that's going to do it for today. I appreciate everyone that tuned in. Stay tuned on Big City Sports PD on Twitter. Post updates about shows and what we'll be talking about next week. And might be able to dive into some NFL things. The Giants back off the bye, play a Monday night football game. The Bears are about to get pumped by the Baltimore Ravens. They've lost 7 straight off the bye. So probably not a win for the Chicago Bears in the beloved city of Chicago. But that's going to do it for today. For Swig, I'm Dylan Kearns, and we will see you next time.